Welcome everyone, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Still Running Your Help Desk In-House, Maybe It's Time to Consider Outsourcing. This is Fabiana Corredor, and I am the Marketing Director at Oxys. Before we get started, as a reminder for all attendees, your microphones are muted. If you have any questions, then feel free to submit them in the question or the chat section of the GoToWebinar panel, and we will make sure to address them as we go through the discussion or at the end of the webinar, depending on the topic that we're going to be discussing throughout. For those interested in receiving a copy of the recording and the presentation afterwards, you can send us a note also through the chat, and we will make sure to send it either later today or tomorrow. Now, I'm very happy to introduce you to our panel moderator for today's session, Adriana Bombacci. Adriana is one of our senior executives at Oxys in the business development team. She is in charge of all of our IT services, which also includes our help desk outsourcing services out of our nearshore platform, both in Costa Rica and Colombia. Adri has a very interesting background because she, did consulting for the first 5+ years of her life, both in IT and business transformation consulting. And now in the last few years, Adri moved to this business development position where she works with a lot of CIOs and IT executives to help them build customized outsourcing solutions. So I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of value from her background, as well as Domingo and Jose, that Adri is gonna be introducing shortly. So with this, welcome Adri, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Fabi, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today. And before we get started, I want to introduce the team that I have with me today. First off, I have Jose Alvarez, who is the Managing Director of our IT services at Oxys. He brings a lot of experience from working in industry at companies such as AT&T, Siemens, and Citibank, as well as working with a wide range of clients with Oxys in different scenarios like integrations, divestitures, transformations, outsourcing, etc. And it's now been over 15 years of that. So I think that he brings very good perspective when talking about considering outsourcing. I also have Domingo Rojas, who is the director of our Costa Rica IT operations. And he brings a very unique perspective because he worked in industry over 20 years and now going into services with Oxys. And while in industry, he led several IT organizations and very big initiatives, like the stand-up of the captive IT shared services center in the Americas for Roche, which I think also will come very good and very applicable for this conversation. So I'm very excited to have them here, and hopefully we'll have a very good discussion for you all today. So with this, I just want to cover very high level some of the topics that we're going to discuss before we jump in. I think they're very relevant when having this conversation of considering outsourcing and making that decision. So I want to first talk about some of the challenges that we're seeing companies are facing and what does it really take to run a very high performing service desk. Also, what are some of the misperceptions of outsourcing, but also what are some of the considerations that you should be making when choosing to outsource or when picking the partner to outsource. So with that, I'm speaking to companies every day, right? And it's becoming increasingly more important in these conversations, the need for these companies to deliver a high quality service desk, but it's also becoming increasingly more difficult for all of them to do so. There are many operational and day-to-day challenges, but there's also some more high-level challenges that seem to be affecting a lot. We're all familiar with digital transformation and how it's become pretty widespread across most of the organizations, but also the heavy technology dependency in all organizations is putting a lot of pressure in these service desk teams and organizations to provide support to a very wide range of different technologies that are being used throughout the organizations. Also, we're all familiar with COVID and the work from home model, or if we can better call it the work from anywhere at any time. This also puts a lot of stress into the organizations, because now they need to probably provide support at different coverage hours than they might have been doing before. So this is also something that we see a lot of companies are starting to struggle with. A very hot topic also is attracting and retaining talent. I think every single person that we're speaking to these days is struggling with this, trying not only to get good talent, but once they get it, to maintain it in the organization. And it's not a shock that the turnover rate for American help desk organizations is now over 40%, which is pretty high. And last but not least, we're all aware that IT organizations have very tight IT budgets that are getting more and more demands from the business to drive value and to drive initiatives, making it even harder for initiatives like help desk to get the proper funding or the proper attention with all the rest of the competing priorities. But even though this is a very big challenge that we also see a trend that help desk related investments are also rising nationwide, because also IT leaders are recognizing the need to provide this support function for their organizations and for their users. So when all of you signed up for the webinar, we asked you a couple of questions, and I wanted to share here some of the results because I think they're pretty interesting. It seems that where are you in the outsourcing journey? Over 75% of the participants are still in the exploration phase, which can mean a couple of things, either that you're still doing it in-house and you're just starting to explore, or you might be doing some sort of hybrid and are also trying to explore if there's an opportunity for change. Another very interesting question is, what is the main driver for considering outsourcing your service desk? And the #1 response is improving your service levels and better access to best practices, having as the second and third the reduction of cost and the expansion of the coverage hours. So with this, I would like to ask Domingo, with what we're seeing from our customers and the people that we're speaking with, what are your thoughts on some of these responses?
Thank you, Adri. So I believe that what we have been seeing, especially during the last couple of years, with all the pandemic and everything, it's a pressure on originated by several trends in the businesses. As you were saying, right, the digital transformation projects, the pressure to work from anywhere at any time on any device is making the business lose the focus, and that is not right. The business needs to focus on create value for them, right? And with that, then this has been generating a lot of pressure also for the IT departments. Like you were saying, for example, regarding budgets, if I need to focus my resources and free up some resources in order to focus on the business value, then IT doesn't have a green card in order to go and invest a lot of money on help desk, right? So these things are happening constantly, okay? But also at the same time, okay, the pressure is to have better services, okay, and better quality on that, okay? So they need to increase the service levels, they need to increase the customer satisfaction, because the trends in the market are demanding those things. So for one side, you need to focus on the business and you need to free up resources, but at the same time, you need to have better services in IT. And that's why it's not difficult to see that, for example, improved service levels and access best practices is becoming one of the major reasons to use outsourcing, okay? Or free up resources also, right? Mm-hmm. So those are very interesting things that are happening right now.
Thank you, Domingo. Jose, what are your thoughts? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, to continue with the same thought about business alignment. I think that's a key here, because companies are not static. The reality is that with all these changes around the world, there are companies that are growing, there are companies that are downsizing, there are companies that are separating from others or merging. We see that all the time. With all these changes in the organizations, then companies are looking for more structured ways to manage end user support and be able to either scale up or down, including maybe they have different needs in terms of languages or hours of operations, things of that nature. So those needs are becoming critical now for companies to support their business model. And it is more difficult to implement those changes when you do it in-house than when you do it with a partner. So I think that's a big trend. And again, it is all about business alignment and what the company is wanting to do.
Great, great. And I think that's a great segue to talk about what are some of, diving a little bit deeper into the services, like what are some of those characteristics of a high-performing service desk, right? Because it's no secret, like you both were saying, that the users and the trends are demanding better service. So regardless if you're outsourcing or not, you should be able to, you should be striving for providing higher service and a high-performing service desk. So there's a couple of things, right? The processes, the knowledge-based tool, automation, self-service capabilities. So there's a lot of things that comprise a high-performing service desk. And like you were mentioning, Jose, it takes time, takes investment, takes a lot of focus to make sure that you're able to get there, right? Why do you think, Jose, it is so important? And maybe which of these characteristics do you think it's key to how?
Yeah, so the title says that high-performing performance management is one of the keys that covers most of the items that we're showing on this slide. And what happens if you have a well-performing service desk where you have the right structure, the right skill set, the right procedures, documentation, tools, then obviously things are going to run very well for you. The company is going to move forward with a very good type of customer service, which is what at the end they're looking for. Now, in order to implement that, you need to invest in whether you do it internally or with an outsourcing, but there's got to be some automation. There are some trends right now that service desks are pushing a lot of the solution to the end user with self solutioning on the portals via chat, via things of that nature. So there are a lot of other initiatives that are part of performance management that are going to help to be successful in having a very good performing service desk.
Great.
And Domingo, I don't know if you want to add anything to it. Yeah, you're mute.
Yeah, so sorry. I think it's clear that as you were saying, the high performance service desk is kind of an ideal situation, right? What I would like also to mention here is that there are not ideal worlds, right? And we need also to be very agile and flexible in this high performing evaluation, right? So the one thing that I'm discovering lately that is very, very important for the service desk organizations is that flexibility, right? Not that old-fashioned help desk that they were very tied to what they do, and I don't do this, I only do these things. And they need to be very flexible in order to satisfy the business needs and all the challenges that the customers are facing.
Yeah, definitely, and that flexibility sometimes comes at a cost, and sometimes it's also challenging to have, right? So when thinking about all these things, you now start to consider, okay, is outsourcing the way to achieve some of these things, right? To get some of this flexibility, to get some of these more robust processes, to try to enable a lot of these things, right? So when thinking about the model, right, is it, do I do it in-house? Do I do an outsourcing or a hybrid? And when we say hybrid, it's because when you outsource it, nothing is necessarily 100% outsourced, right? In the scenario of service desk, you typically outsource level 1, and probably level 2 and level 3 support are being done still by the internal team. So Jose, when thinking about this, how do you determine what is the right model for your organization?
Yeah, and determining the right model is a little bit difficult. We actually help organizations to determine what is the right model for them based on some of the items that are mentioned here. For example, the culture of the organization. That is a key thing. A lot of companies, they want to have it in-house because of the way that they operate, whether it's family business or not, things of that nature. So that can make a good point from companies deciding which model to go. And then the maturity of the organization. It is important to understand that when a company is growing and evolving and maturing, they're going to look into more structured type of process. So that can go with them in their growth journey to whatever scalability they need. So that is a key item as well. And lastly, I want to talk about the complexity. There is a misconception that if every company thinks that I'm very complex and I cannot outsource my service desk, but the reality is that even if you're complex or not, there are ways for the service desk to transition, document, and train people to take care of those level 1 type of issues for end users, so the company can actually focus in those complexities on the back end, whether it's application or systems or whatever product they support. In that way, they can leave the day-to-day to an organization that can do the outsourcing of that particular area. And Domingo, I don't know if you want to add a few others in here. Any experiences there? You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I can provide a good example. It's basically some years ago, we were approached by an internal customer because they were having this amazing application to basically recognize patterns on certain scans from tumor cancer tissues, right? So they were recognizing, using artificial intelligence, biomarkers, and it was great, right? But this application was regulated and needs approval from the FDA. So when we were designing the support model for that, yeah, that had to be in-house because you need to fulfill certain regulations, right? So that's when it's not in-house outsource, just like black and white. You need to do a certain balance. That's why I really like the hybrid word, because it's not black and white, the analysis of these things.
Yeah, there's definitely different considerations for every company to take, right? And
Sure.
not that the model is going to fit everyone. With this, I want to jump into our first polling question, do a little bit of a mini break here into what are some of your concerns about outsourcing? Typically, companies that are going into outsourcing or first-time outsourcing have a little bit of concerns or doubts. So just want to get your responses.
Right. So I just opened the polling question, Adri, and remember that you can select all of the options that apply to your case. So I'll give it a couple of more seconds to try to capture as many responses as possible, and I'll share the results with you in a second. All right, so I'm closing it now. We capture around 70% of your votes. And let's see what you guys have to say. So very interesting. If you see the number one concern is quality of the service with 86% of you. The second one is lack of knowledge of my business with 71%. The third one is impact to the current organization and the business disruption that it can cause. That's 50%. The fourth one is workforce quality and language skills with 43%. And then the business case, it's 21%.
Very, very interesting. Thank you, Fabi. These are very interesting responses, and I think that we're going to get into almost all of them in a little bit. And I think that it's normal, and we encounter a lot of our customers having some of these type of questions and concerns when considering these. But typically, a lot of these get ironed out once they start going through the process. So I want to tie this concerns with some of the misperceptions as well, right? Because I think the number one response was the concern over quality. And I think that this is definitely, we hear it often, but I think this is also a very big misconception. So Domingo, you're providing service. You're in charge of the team that's providing service. So why do you think that companies think or believe that service is going to go down or quality is going to go down if they move to an outsourcing provider?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was doing the polling myself, and I would choose the same one. Usually, people think that usually people is concerned about doing outsourcing, about the quality, and it's because, well, there are several reasons, and there are different organizations, right? But usually, and I can share a story. Some years ago, also, we were approached by the business into the IT organization that I was managing, and they were telling us, look, we really need to reduce the cost. Okay. At that moment, we were having a customer satisfaction of 85%, right? And it was great. The service was very good, yeah, but it's very expensive, of course. And they asked us, okay, well, we need to reduce the cost. Okay, so we did the math, and okay, we went back to the business and said, look, if you want to reduce the cost, then we are forecasting that the customer satisfaction probably will go low to 70%. And for the business decision makers at that moment, and this was many years ago, they were saying, oh, fine, we will save 25% of the cost. Let's do it. Okay.
And this is on an in-house operation, right?
Yeah, totally in-house, and it was crazy, totally crazy, right? Because then, yeah, we reduced the cost, but the quality of the service that the business was requiring to produce the business value was not there anymore. So there was a business affectation, and sometimes in this slide is very interesting because we underestimate what is required to provide a quality service, right? Yeah, and you can connect that with for example, basic things like for example, what the agents of level 1 can do and cannot do, right? Everybody wants to the level 1 do everything, right? But now we need to think also about security and compliance. So they cannot do everything, right? And they have to do it quickly. So if they have to do it quickly, then they need to focus on basic things, right? But people usually, regarding quality, forget about what is required to have good quality, like good training processes, good onboarding processes, good transition processes, have a good knowledge base with right KBs, knowledge articles, in order to support all those processes that you are providing, right? And of course, and this is very, very important, it connects to what we were discussing a little bit earlier, about performance, to have a good KPI system, a good reporting system. Okay, you need to measure. If you don't measure, then you don't know how you're doing, right? So all those things are combined in order to produce a good service. Right?
And typically, Domingo, when you go to an outsourcing provider, they have a lot of these tools, they have a lot of this setup, right? It's almost like a benefit of going to an outsourcing provider, right? They're able to support and push you to get a lot of these things rather than having to do them in-house, right? And start from scratch.
Exactly. And that's when you have to take the decision, or I go to outsource, or I go to do all those things by myself. And every situation is different, right? I don't know, Jose, what is your experience about these things?
Yeah, actually, it is interesting because we're talking about quality. And when we got the poll, most of the people, 70+%, said, I'm afraid to outsource because of my quality will deteriorate on my company. It will go down. At the same time, we saw an earlier slide today that most of the people will do an outsourcing to a help desk to increase their quality. So there is this inconsistency, and the reason of that inconsistency is obviously because of unknowns. I mean, a lot of people obviously don't know exactly what they're getting when they do a service desk, so it requires some education. But even if we tied up quality with, and I know we're going to talk about that on this slide about the fallacy, which is a misperception of the price per ticket, it is all related. So we can say this is a cost per ticket, but what is behind the cost per ticket? In order to have good quality, we have to have the right skill set. So people that are trained, that have the right experience, that speak the right language, and they have the right customer service skills. But not only that, we have a team, a structured team. We have agents, leads, supervisors, managers, I mean, all the structure. Then we have the tools that go with that. And those tools are for call center, for chat, for the ticketing system, for reporting, all these tools that go with that. And then the structure and very strong procedures and documentation. So all these things are part of a price per ticket. But one misperception is, well, why am I paying this much on a ticket base if this is just an agent resolving a case? And the reality is not that. It's a lot more than that. But that is all tied up back to quality. So we got good quality, we need to have the right structure to support that quality.
Yeah, definitely very interesting, Jose, and it's definitely something that we come across, and to your point, it's a little bit of that, making sure that everyone is aware of everything that needs to go into a high-performing service desk to provide good quality, right? It's all tied together, like you said, and it ends up reflecting in the price per ticket. So it's a little bit more complex than just the labor cost, if we might say. Now, if we go, let's say we're now in the process of, okay, I do want to go into outsourcing. I do want to evaluate it a little bit more, which is where most of our audience is, right? What are some of the key considerations that you should be taking or that you should be evaluating? So there's plenty of things to consider, right? So first off, we have the support model. What model makes more sense? A managed team or a dedicated team or a managed service? The pricing model, there's different pricing models that you can get, either a price per ticket, a price per user, or even a price per agent if we're talking about a dedicated team. And technology, do I already have a good ITSM system that is robust and that is set up? I want to continue using my system, or maybe I don't have a good ITSM system and I want to use my partner's system or the technology package that my partner is bringing. And last but not less important is the location. Where do I want to outsource? Do I want onshore, nearshore, offshore? Jose, what is your perspective? Let's start with the different support models. When does it make more sense to have a dedicated team or a managed team versus a full managed service model?
Yeah, and managed teams are great for organizations that require dedicated teams that have enough volume to support this amount of people through different shifts if they have requests, obviously, or requirements for different shift type of support. They also, managed teams is also good if you are, or you consider yourself very complex, or you have a very specific type of support that you need that requires a particular skill set or training or knowledge that needs to happen for your organization. Managed services, on the other side, are more shared type of teams that they have their general knowledge on how to support an end user, we're talking about regular Microsoft products, computers, hardware, software, etc. But also if you have, let's say, if you're a global organization and you need support throughout different shifts, different languages, then managed services will be great. And we have something in between, like Domingo mentioned before, is a hybrid. Maybe you need some managed teams on one shift, maybe some shared on another shift, things of that nature. So there's definitely different models that can fit to different type of organizations. I want to mention also a couple of other things on the technology. So sometimes we have a great ITSM system to manage obviously our tickets, change controls, knowledge management, and all that. A lot of organizations, they have their own system, but they don't want to pay the license. They don't want to manage because they don't have the people to support that system. And they do have other teams like applications or infrastructure teams or some other teams that need access to that. In order to have a consolidated view or consolidated system, Oxys or a vendor can provide this particular system to manage all the tickets and these processes for the organization, as well as the help desk. Or in some cases, if it's a managed teams, a vendor can use the company's ITSM system. In that way, it's integrated with the rest of the teams. So there's a couple of considerations there as well.
And keeping with technologies, Jose, what are some of the technologies that a partner can bring? What are other of the tools that because the ITSM system is just one portion, right? What other things should a partner be able to bring?
So we have the call center, which is DIDs, 800 numbers, local numbers, not only US based, but global, that we can bring with technologies that allow us to have queues and different prompts and all that. Chat is very popular now. Most of our clients are actually asking for chat because users rather having a chat session with an agent instead of calling, and then we can understand that. We also bring self portal for ticket status and opening tickets. And then we have on the back end, we have all kind of different tools to help us manage the performance. And we use tools like Power BI for reporting and performance. And Domingo may want to talk about it in a minute, but those are like the main key tools. And Domingo, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about reporting in Power BI.
Well, our experience in Power BI has been, I have to say, great. I mean, some years ago, you were having in the market some great players like Tableau or ClickView, right? But now Power BI is kind of the standard. And Power BI is very powerful in order to connect different sources and correlate different types of information. So our experience has been very good on that. And creating dashboards for our customers have proved to be very, very successful also in that transformation from the push mindset to the pull mindset, right? Before, people used to have just receive emails, right? So I send an email with all the metrics and all the reports. Yeah, that's push, right? But now, these days, people require to have access at any time, at any moment, when it's more convenient to the information. So basically, what we have been doing is delivering BI portals for our customers.
So it's almost like more participation from our customers, right? With interacting with the information and not being the outsourcing just a black box, right? Of not receiving or not seeing live information when it's happening. That's great insight. Now, Domingo, let's touch a little bit on the location, because I think that you have great experience in this area. When you stood up the captive center for Roche, there was a decision on where this was going to happen. So what are your thoughts on how to choose the right location to outsource?
Well, in my experience here in Americas, basically Latin America has becoming quite popular for these things, and it's in the case of Roche for the shared service center, I remember three criteria, and let's start first for the location, the geographic location. Basically, if you want to cover especially the US and Canada market, you need kind to be in the middle, right? So you look places that are kind of good regarding time zones, right? To cover, to start very early in the morning and start with the Atlantic, and then late at night with the Pacific, right? So it's better to look for those type of locations. And in fact, Costa Rica is very good for that. Okay, it has been also another reason developing during many years by the influence and the investment of several companies, a great ecosystem with where education is matched with also job and development opportunities, right? So here in Costa Rica, you can find great talent that is educated, but also there's certain cultural affinity, because after all these years of US companies investing in Costa Rica, basically there is a cultural affinity also. And finally, I will have to say that is the language part, right? There are several countries where you can find people who speak English, right? But it's also very important to have an accent that doesn't sound, some people say that it's a neutral accent, right? But it's not necessarily neutral. That it sounds right for you. And it's kind of subjective, okay? But I remember, for example, when we started at Roche after a couple of months, then we were contacted by Australia, okay? Because they were being supported by the center in APAC. And the accent for them was very, very difficult to understand the agents. So they told us, look, can you start having people at night and supporting us? Because it's better for us. It's better if we use the US support instead of the APAC support. And this is quite real. Now Latin America is becoming very, very, very good also to support different languages and different regions in the whole world. Right?
Very interesting. Yeah, that's definitely something that we're seeing, that it's not just now the US backyard, yeah, right? It's also becoming from a global perspective to support everyone else. Now getting a little bit into what should you expect from an outsourcing partner, right? There's a list of things. There's many things that we can come up with, right? But here are things that I thought were very important when making this consideration. And I mean, robust performance management, which we briefly touched upon, some automation, knowledge management practices, the high caliber talent, of course. They're all things that are ultimately tied to a service and to the quality of the service that you're going to get, right? So Domingo, what do you think is the priority for our customers right now?
I think all these are very valid items in order to be analyzed. Probably the trend lately, and I remember when I was a CIO and I had an outsource partner, and they showed me all the metrics and everything was green and all the SLAs are great. But then I had the general manager or some director knocking on my door of the office, look, this is not working, the support is really bad and everything. But you look to your dashboards and everything is green, right? So what is happening during the last few years is that we are moving from SLAs to XLAs to measure that customer experience. We really need to focus, and this is what is more important now when you are looking for an outsourcing partner. This outsourcing partner need to focus first on the customer, okay, and the people, right? Be very empathic about their needs, and also focusing on solving their problems. Okay, they have issues, they have needs that are affecting their business. So you need to know their business, and you need to know how help them and focus on solution that. And third, yes, let's focus on fulfill processes, SLAs, and everything, because those are really important, and documentation, and that's the robust part, and those are the rules for the long term, right? But this is quite important right now, at least from my point of view.
That's definitely very interesting, because those are ultimately your customers, right? The end users are the ones that you need to make sure that are being satisfied and the requests are being met. Jose, is there anything that you want to add on these points that we have here?
Yeah, and we've been talking about performance management all over the place, which I think that is a key for the success of a service desk. But there's a couple of items here that I think are interesting based on the poll that we had and the feedback from the team that joined this call. I think knowledge management practices are very important and key also. A lot of organizations don't have documentation. And the reality is that it's very hard to support a user if you don't understand what to do. And the poll says, the second item on the poll, or the responses were, they don't know my business. As we actually manage a company and we get very close to understand all these processes and how to support the users, that will increase quality, and that will increase the knowledge of the company. And now we become an extension of the organization instead of being just a vendor and just a help desk. So all these things are very, very related to quality at the end. The last point here on this slide is also very important, and I'm talking about the spirit of the agreement. A lot of companies, they nickel and dime you for pricing in terms of tickets or support areas and things of that. Some organization, and we're one of them, they look into build that relationship with their clients, have that relationship that they can support them, and you're not just looking to charge for every single thing. You are billing because you need to obviously to make money out of this business, but also you're doing the right thing for your clients. And doing the right thing is making sure that the users are well supported with the right quality. So I think that's super important in a relationship with the vendor as well.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think some of these things sometimes get overlooked, right? With sometimes a little bit more the pricing aspect being the main focus, and forgetting that all of these things, like we've been talking, are very important to ensure quality of the service. And let's take a little bit of a step back to have a second polling question on understanding the maturity of the service desk metrics and the performance management practice of your organizations right now.
Yeah, so the question is, what best describes the level of maturity of your services metrics and performance management practices? Very immature, somewhat immature, somewhat mature, or very, and apologies for the writing, the last one, consider it to be very mature. That was a misspelling. So from top down, from immature to mature. I'm collecting a couple of more answers, Adri, and we'll share the results in a minute.
Perfect.
All right, so closing the poll now. So basically, somewhat immature, 54%, and very immature, 8%. So basically, the ones that consider themselves in those two ranges are more than 60%.
Mm-hmm.
Only 50% consider them to be somewhat mature, and 23% very mature.
And this is very interesting, because I think it goes a little bit back to what we were talking about, some of the things that a partner can bring, right? They can bring some support on maturing this performance management practices, right, guys? Into not only with technology, but with processes, documentation.
Yeah, and I want to mention something, because you're right about that. We have organizations that have approaches saying, hey, I have no processes, or I need to be ITIL compliant, or I need to have these particular compliance requirements that I need to fill out or succeed and be with my requirements with my business. And how can I get there? So if they implement all these process services and everything on the service desk, usually we see that they take probably about 3 times what it will take an outsourcer company to get them there. So it is important to understand that maturity goes tied up with some of these structured processes and frameworks, and companies that do that work will take you faster to that point instead of you spending the time and money doing that.
Right, it's an investment, right? Mm-hmm.
It happens all the time to you. I'm sure that when you have these conversations and you start asking the customers for data in terms of their ticket volume and their productivity per agent and all of these metrics that we are so familiar with, they don't really have visibility into those metrics even in the first place, right?
Right, yeah. According to our experience, also some clients they do, but a lot of them they basically don't have a clue. Basically, they have a very customized service internally, right? And they basically work on demand. And so for them, sometimes it's difficult to provide these type of metrics.
And rightfully so. That's not the core business. If you have a company that sells cars, that's their core business, is to sell cars. It's not to have a strong service desk with the process and metrics and all that goes around it. So rightfully so, these companies are focused on what they need to focus. IT should focus on what they're best at, and then maybe is to do improvements and efficiencies and leave the day-to-day to another company that can help them with.
Yeah, take away that headache or that distraction, let's call it. Now, getting into the last section of our discussion today. So we now understand what are some of the considerations that you need to take. So now let's say that we've selected a partner to do outsourcing. There's a migration process, right, before the service begins. So you need to basically set the foundation for the ongoing service. And I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna go through the entire process, but Jose, when you're doing the migration, what are some of the things that you need to make sure that you get right?
This is actually one of my favorite topics because to us, we manage service desk, and we are as successful as we have a successful onboarding or transition. So this process, which usually takes a few weeks, couple of months or whatsoever, involves a particular team that comes and discover and document and implement tools, etc. But at the end, this is a kind of like a marriage. It's between two organizations that are trying to get the knowledge from one to the other, so this new organization can support the users well. The commitment from the outsourcer is to provide the right resources and procedures and tools to document everything that they can and train so they can support the users. The commitment from the client that is trying to outsource is to provide access to this information or documentation or access to whatever the outsourcing needs in order to get those things implemented and ready to go. So at the end, it is a commitment from two organizations. The client also needs to have some good communications with the end users, set up expectations about what's coming up and what's going to happen and how they're going to be serviced and all that. But if all this happens during this onboarding, then hopefully the relationship is going to be successful and the engagement will be successful moving forward.
Yeah, that's very important. But Domingo, what are some of the watchouts or some of the pitfalls that can happen when going through this process?
I will mention just the main one, and is that when a company decides to go to outsourcing, basically there is a certain pressure, right? So the deadline is tomorrow. So everybody wants, okay, yeah, let's sign now, and tomorrow is going to be working. And it's not like that. This requires time, requires processes, good planning, good transition, create the proper documentation, then mapping all the knowledge articles and the knowledge management pieces, as Jose was saying. And usually this is the piece where nobody's expecting this, right? And you have to respect the process in order to be successful.
That's very interesting, and we do get some situations where they want to start in 2 weeks, and it's virtually impossible, right? To make sure that we have a successful migration and a successful service, like you said, you have to respect the process and you have to do everything because you have to set the partner for success, but you also want to make sure that you're getting a good service in return, right?
Yeah, and sometimes people think it's about hiring people, right? You need to go and hire 2 or 3 people. No, it's yeah, well, that's in one aspect, of course, but it's you need to train the people, you need to map the knowledge, you need to create the processes in order to have a success service, right? And so you need to respect these steps.
Yeah, that's definitely something very, very important to consider when evaluating partners. How strong or how robust is this migration process, right? Because this is going to be a key stepping stone into what comes next. With that, I'll give the floor back to Fabi.
Yeah, so Adri, we have a couple of questions, but before we get there, As you saw at the beginning, most of you are in the very early exploratory stages of what outsourcing could mean to you. It might make sense, it might not make sense, depending on what you're looking. So one of the things that other clients find very valuable is to go through this complementary assessment that we do, that it's basically an assessment where Adri, Jose, and the team are gonna gather data from your existing help desk operation in terms of your current staffing model, your number of tickets, the complexity of the operation, if you're looking for specific languages that you need to add, how much are you currently spending for your service desk, and they basically put together a list of recommendations on how to optimize the help desk. Some of those recommendations are related to just automation and better processes. Some of those are related to outsourcing, and that way you can actually have a good perspective on, if you were to move to outsourcing, what it would look like, what would be the potential cost and model, how much of that would be hybrid or in-house. So it's a very, insightful process that, it's a very short process depending on how fast we can get the data. And we really encourage you to, to take the opportunity to go through this analysis. So for those of you that are interested in getting something like this schedule, I'm gonna run a quick polling question so you can let us know that you're interested. And also, if you have any questions on the assessment, you can reach out to any of us here. And I'm also going to provide you the email of Alex Sanchez, that is one of our client development managers, that would also be in touch with you to answer any questions. And in the meantime, Adri, while I collect the responses, one of the questions was about wanting to know a little bit more about the options of countries in Latin America. Like, this specific client is interested in nearshoring. They don't really want to look into India, but wanted to get your perspective on Costa Rica versus other potential countries. So any thoughts on that?
Jose or Domingo, any of you want to take it, or?
Yeah, I mean, we right now, for example, in our case, we are providing services out of Costa Rica and Colombia. But it all depends what they're looking for. I mean, Costa Rica, for example, and Colombia, those countries have very good high educational levels, and there is affinity to US in terms of cultural. They're very close to it. At the same time, we have the schedules are very similar as well from other countries in Latin America. So those are like the main reasons that those countries made sense for us, even when we selected these type of operation centers in Latin America, were related to those topics.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely several countries in Latin America, like Jose said. It's a matter of having an understanding of what you want, what you need, and what those countries can offer. I think every country has something a little bit different that can offer in terms of skill set, languages, geographic location, accessibility, political stability. So there's a couple of things to consider. But like Jose said, at the moment, Colombia, Costa Rica are great locations. I know some companies also use countries like Mexico to get some services, or Argentina. But again, there needs to be an evaluation, right, of a lot of those things to make sure that they fit with what you're looking for.
One thing to add is that languages can be supported out of a lot of these countries. So for example, I know that we have support for like Mandarin, Portuguese, and some other languages out of these countries. So it's not like you're limited to a country with the language. You find people that actually can speak those other languages as well.
Exactly.
Thank you. And the other question was, this company is looking into outsourcing beyond just the help desk. They're also looking into some infrastructure management. So they wanted to know more about what else we do besides help desk.
Domingo, you want to address that?
Sure. Well, we have other businesses also, or other business lines. I would like to start with monitoring and remediation pieces, right? What many people call the NOC. So basically, we can monitor the infrastructure of a company, even if it's on-premise or cloud or hybrid. And we can do it for the top players in the market, like AWS or Azure. And and we can also solve basic services like backups, antivirus, and of course patching. That is usually what is related with these particular services. We have also the full managed service. That is when a company tell us or a customer tell us, okay, I need you to manage everything, not just the monitoring and basic solution part. I need you to handle all the infrastructure. And for that, basically, we provide engineering services on different technologies, of course, including networking, including, again, Azure, AWS, 365. Those are basically our top trends, and most of our customers are in those technologies. But Jose, you have a lot of experience also, and you know that you can share also a lot about this.
Yeah, I will add that, yes, our core business is to manage infrastructure, and that includes service desk in most of the cases. So service desk is a subset of the services that we provide. We do have very high level type of skill resources in cloud, in data center management, which include networking, Linux, Windows, things of that nature. So yes, the answer is we provide a lot more than just service desk, and that is our core business, the whole management for IT backend.
Awesome. And then another question is, have you looked at Ireland or Europe, or do you have plans to expand there? And one of the things that you were mentioning, Jose and Domingo, is, even though that Costa Rica is in the Americas time zone, it's a very common global destination. So a lot of our clients that we support from a help desk perspective are European companies that are doing the whole coverage of the globe, even for APAC, EMEA, and Americas out of Costa Rica, because, Costa Rica has the maturity and other companies that do global support. You get a lot of the multilingual capabilities out of Costa Rica. Now, when you're a company that is heavy concentrated in Europe and you may not necessarily need coverage for the Americas, a lot of our clients in some cases do a regional model where they may have a partner, for example, like us for the Americas, and a different solution for Europe when the volumes, are enough in Europe to require a different model. So also, when it comes to us, we have a specific partner sometimes that we recommend that are based in those areas when it makes sense, and Costa Rica, or Colombia doesn't make sense for them. I don't know, Jose or Domingo, if you have anything to add.
Just to quickly, so we are 24/7, and the reality is that most of our clients, which are US based, have locations in the rest of the world. We have clients that have 30+ locations in Europe, Asia, that we support out of Costa Rica with no problem. We do have specific teams that are on a specific time shifts if we need to support, let's say, European countries, starting in the midnight or so like that for Costa Rican time. So there is no secret that Costa Rica can support the all organizations worldwide, which we've been doing for a long time. As of now, we're not looking into a particular expansion in Europe. That doesn't mean that that's not going to happen in the near future. But right now, with the current needs and the way that we're doing it, it's been very satisfactory for our clients. So that's the answer for that.
Awesome. And I think I have one last question here. Yeah, no, this is more like a comment. All right, so I think that we covered every question, Adrian. Actually, we made it into the hour.
Yes, keeping everyone on their schedule, being mindful of everyone's time. So I just want to thank everyone for joining, and I also want to thank Jose and Domingo for participating. I'm hoping that it was a good discussion, and that you found it useful, because while we know outsourcing is popular and it can provide great value and great benefits to an organization, I think it's important to make sure that you're making the right considerations, right? To make sure that you're getting the right fit from a partner to provide great service to your organization and to your user, and to make sure that you can get a long-term supporting structure and a good partnership. So hopefully everyone found it valuable, and thanks for joining.
Thank you. And Adri, also as a quick reminder, the last slide, I know some of you have downloaded it already, but we have a guide that we recently put together that lays out in a lot of detail a lot of these key considerations and key steps for outsourcing the help desk successfully. that I really recommend, for you to review it if you haven't. So for those interested, when you look at the presentation, you have a link there to download it. So thank you, Adri and Domingo and Jose, and have a great rest of your day for you and for the rest of the people that joined us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.